The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
They call themselves Diamond and Silk, two sisters from North Carolina who say they're proudly and loudly stumping for Trump.
This is not about politics. This is about common sense.
They become regulars on cable TV.
Donald Trump is going to do well with the African-American vote.
Right.
He's going to do well with the Latino Hispanic vote. Hey, y'all.
Take a look at their YouTube page with its 6 million views and counting.
Vote right, and you need to vote for Donald J. Trump.
When they get rolling, Diamond, real name Lynette Hardaway, sounds like a Baptist preacher.
We want someone that's going to come in that's going to solely work for the American people and not against the people. Now, I'm going to calm myself down because I'll start preaching about why I'm...
Start? I was waiting for the benediction. We were deep into the sermon.
Lynette Diamond Hardaway, one half of the duo Diamond and Silk, has died at the age of 51. She was an ardent Donald Trump supporter and a very vocal anti-vax propagandist. She died of COVID-19. She contracted it last month, and her Twitter page solicited prayers for her recovery. Now, full transparency, I prayed for this sister. Now, my politics vehemently disagree with hers. My blackness most certainly disagreed with hers. Sometimes I do my best not to judge people. I can't front and pretend as though I'm not ever judgmental. I do try to understand how a black person can sell themselves out to white supremacy, but I also understand people do what they have to do to survive this system. So part of me feels like Diamond and Silk were a response to white supremacy, a way of surviving it. I never really appreciated their work, still don't now. I am sorry that sister is gone, but I have to look holistically at the cost of conservative commentary. Diamond joins a long list of Republican conservative commentators who opposed the vaccine, who pretended like COVID-19 wasn't real, who advised their audiences, respectively, to not take this seriously, to not wear masks, to not get vaccinated, to not social distance. They literally did everything they could to exacerbate this situation, the situation of COVID-19. And she joins a list, including Herman Cain, former Republican candidate, 999 Herman Cain. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that. He died of COVID-19. He didn't take it serious because someone in a trusted position in the Republican ecosystem convinced all of conservatism that, one, they shouldn't take this pandemic serious, and two, they should actively oppose vaccinations, wearing masks, as well as socially distancing. So she joins Herman Cain. She joins Phil Valentine, whose book, The Conservative Playbook, or was it The Conservative Handbook? The Conservative Handbook by Phil Valentine. Read the book. He's dead from COVID-19. Let's go down the list. Another Republican commentator who's dead from COVID-19. It's going to be Mark Brenier, a Florida-based radio talk show host who died after telling his audience that the virus wasn't real and that they shouldn't take the vaccine. It was a pandemic. He's dead. Let's go on. Dick Farrell. He died of COVID-19 as well back in 2021. He called Anthony Fauci a power-tripping, lying freak. He died of COVID-19. Now, at least before he died, he reached out to some of his good friends and told them, after he contracted the virus, he reached out to them and told them to please go get the vaccine. Please take it seriously. Unfortunately, he didn't, and he died. I mean, Marcus Lamb, he was the co-founder of the Christian TV network Daystar Television. I used to watch that a little bit when I was in my early 20s, when I was really in the church. They used to have some pretty good black preachers come on every now and then. He's dead. COVID-19 took him too. Listen, the wages of sin is death according to the Bible, but the wages of ignorance, the wages of conservative commentary, the wages of stupidity, anti-science propaganda is also death. It costs entirely too much to be a conservative in this country. They require entirely too much to be a conservative in this country. They require, not as George Orwell said, that the highest command of the party was that 2 + 2 = 5. No, we're well past the anti-science, the know-nothingness of 1984, right? We are at the place of commitment unto death. These people are dying to own the libs. These people are dying to prove a point that they're wrong on. And they are actively right now trying to rewrite history through a manufactured consent, where if you say anything online about the pandemic, thousands of trolls will come into your mentions and gaslight you into thinking that, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the pandemic isn't real. Well, 500 bodies dropping a day in this country would say otherwise. 6.7 million people who have died across this globe would beg to differ. I'm sure Diamond, Lynette Hardaway would beg to differ. Herman Cain would beg to differ. Phil Valentine would beg to differ. But in order for you to be a good conservative, you have to deny the truth about, not only deny the truth. Here's the thing. They're not only actively denying the truth, they're actively spreading misinformation. And this misinformation is getting their own people killed. Research has shown that more Republicans died than Democrats after COVID-19 vaccines came out. I'm reading from governmentexecutive.com. The sharp divergence in excess death rates that emerged in the post-vaccine period is pretty striking, according to the research. The study finds that excess deaths during the pandemic were 76% higher amongst Republicans than Democrats in two key states, Ohio and Florida. Hello, Ron DeSantis. You're killing your own people. But do you think he cares about that? I mean, he only supervised torture at Guantanamo Bay, right? He was the good cop to the bad cop of the actual water borders. He was the guy who provided validity to them in terms of a human rights, of being a human rights attorney. So do you actually think the sociopath, Ron the sociopath, actually cares that more Republicans died in his state from COVID-19 as a direct result of not only his misinformation, but the misinformation that comes from the entire Republican ecosystem and echo chamber? You know, I get, someone like Robert Kennedy Jr., who is at the top of this hierarchy of anti-vax information. He has no loyalty to any party. He's honestly just out to destroy the world. I'm pretty sure he's still pissed off that the CIA killed his daddy. I'm joking. I don't know that that's true. But Robert Kennedy Jr. is most certainly not committed to, he doesn't care if Republicans or Democrats die. He doesn't care if you're black or white and you die. He is a misinformation expert, propagandist of the highest order. He wants all of us to die from COVID-19 because he's still upset at America. So I get I get Robert Kennedy Jr., but Ron DeSantis is going to need some of these votes. Republicans, I mean, maybe they would have won all of the midterms if they hadn't been so busy killing their people. But their people are excitedly and happily dying for them. So what's Ron DeSantis supposed to do? Sit there and be mad because his supporters they want to die? They want to die of COVID-19? I'm sorry to Diamond. Sorry to that sister. I'm not going to mock her. I'm not going to laugh about it. Death is pretty damn permanent. That's why I don't, I rarely joke about people dying unless you're of the order of Rush Limbaugh and the world is a better place because he's resting in hell right now. But generally speaking, I grieve when anyone dies, and that's just me. But I can't help but to look at this and realize that the wages of conservatism is death. The cost to be a conservative is pretty high. Not only do you have to be ignorant, not only do you have to sell your soul, but you have to be willing to die. Rest in peace, Diamond from Diamond and Silk. I want you to file this next story underneath false equivalences. And I want you to specifically drill down and categorize this into how the media aids and abets the Republican Party in forwarding their false equivalences. Now, that's how I'm going to introduce this next story, because I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this because CNN is. CNN has been reporting all day long about the classified documents that were found and discovered in one of former Vice President and now sitting President Joe Biden's private offices. And now all of a sudden Republicans care about classified documents because, as we understand what's going on with Donald Trump, the Republican Party has made it clear that they don't think anything of it. They don't think this is just the Merrick Garland Department of Justice run amok. But now that they have found, and I want to point out the exact number of documents because I think this is important, they have found fewer than 12 some top secret documents, and the U.S. attorney is investigating. This is what they found in the Biden private offices. Donald Trump had 160 classified documents, 60 of them that were top secret. What's more is that the Trump documents, they were requested back from the U.S. government, and Trump filibustered as long as he possibly could until they raided Mar-a-Lago to recover these documents. Now, anyone who's listened to the show any amount of time understand that I am no fan of Joe Biden beyond the fact that he's not a fascist. I voted for him, and I'm glad I did, because the last thing we needed was a fascist in the White House by the name of Donald Trump. So I'm not one who's going to create a false narrative, or more specifically, special pleading on behalf of any politician, let alone Joe Biden. But if you cannot see the substantive difference here, whereas as soon as these documents were discovered to be in his property, the property in the possession of Joe Biden in his private offices, I believe these offices that they specifically found them in were in Pennsylvania, he returned them. And there's an investigation. So let's look into whatever happened. Like, if there's some misconduct there, that's one thing. That's totally if there was misconduct, fine. I mean, do what you do. But it's amazing to me that the Republican Party and CNN specifically, they are trying to draw a one-to-one comparison between this and what's going on with Donald Trump. Listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene as she describes what she believes should happen as a result of these 12 documents that were found in Joe Biden's private offices, as compared to what they're saying they should do about Donald Trump, which is essentially leave him alone.
Do you have a message about the documents found at the Penn Biden Center?
This is a very serious situation. Vice presidents cannot declassify documents, and the fact that Joe Biden is in possession of classified documents when he was vice president signals that we need to have a serious investigation into this. And there's a true two-tiered justice system stemming from Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, and the way that President Trump has been treated, who is allowed to classify and declassify documents. Presidents can do that, versus the Democrats and Joe Biden and how he's being treated. I'll echo again, impeach Biden, and that's what we need to do.
So the Republican Party, they have something. Now, you have to remember, this is the party of Benghazi, of the Benghazi hearings. I don't know if you recall, I think it was circa 2010. Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State at the time, and the consulate, the embassy in Benghazi was raided by attackers and 4 Americans were killed, including the ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens. And actually, it was 2012 when that happened. The Republican Party drug that hearing out. They did everything they could to make Hillary Clinton solely accountable enough for them to drag out hearings for years when they had nothing to stick on her, nothing that they could actually have. There was nothing that she did so wrong that warranted an investigation or imprisonment. This is what they wanted. I only bring this up, again, not as though I'm a big fan of Hillary Clinton, but it's the false equivalences that are required to maintain this idea, this false narrative that there is a equal balance in terms of the political parties in this country, that they're just two sides of the opposite coins when it comes to anything, literally anything, but especially in terms of these investigations. We have yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, we have a 2-tiered system. One where Donald Trump can literally get away with inciting an insurrection and has not been arrested 2 years later. We live in a country where Donald Trump can violate the emoluments clause while he's the president. We live in a country where Donald Trump can make money from foreign nations while he's sitting as a president of the United States. So let's talk about the 2-tiered system of justice. But let's also talk about the necessity that this media infrastructure, that this country, this nation requires a false narrative of equivalence. These are false equivalences. Now, until fine, do an investigation. It requires an investigation. Good. Investigate how these top secret documents were found, or were they just classified? Classified documents were found at the property in the private offices of Vice President Joe Biden. And if any impropriety is there, then by all means, I'm not going to be one who says, like, don't hold the presidents accountable. We must hold presidents accountable. But at the end of the day, this looks and smells like a nothing burger along the lines of the Benghazi hearings. But that doesn't stop them. We're going to hear about this nonstop for the next 2 years.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions. Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. I want to hit a couple of headlines. Yesterday, we reported on the 6-year-old who took a gun last Friday in a Virginia elementary school and shot a teacher as she was giving classroom instruction. This teacher is alive. She survived. She was shot through the hand and in her chest. She is in stable condition. I want to play a clip of one of the parents whose child attends the same school. And I want you to listen to how she describes it. She is from the UK and she is married to an American soldier, which is why she's here in the United States. Just listen to her, because honestly, I think she said it best.
Okay, that's the biggest problem in this country. The statistics in the UK for crime is 0 for guns. Why is it so bad? Why is there a 7-year-old with a bloody gun? Come on, think about it. Let's do something. We've got a new governor now. Let's do something. Let's change it. You've got a beautiful country. You've got beautiful people. But what's the problem? Guns. How does a 7-year-old have a gun? That's what I'm pissed off with. I'm only here because my husband's in the military, or otherwise I would not have chosen to come to this country. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, I mean, that's right. It's the guns. Now, I have a complicated relationship with guns because I know full well that the fascists are armed. They are preparing for a civil war, a second civil war. So I'm less predisposed to say that we should ban all weapons. I'm just not there anymore. I don't believe in unilaterally disarming one side of the equation. But if we really wanted to make America great, ever, then we would absolutely ban assault rifles. And I know this was a handgun that was used, but it is part and parcel of the culture. It is a direct product of the culture of weapon worship, gun worship in this country. We got to start somewhere. But again, you have to realize and contextualize this for who and what we're dealing with. These are the same people who have demonstrated that they are willing to die on behalf of conservatism, on behalf of owning the libs. I mean, so should we expect anything better from Republicans, from conservatives? I mean, we just reported on Diamond from Diamond and Silk dying of COVID-19. Take a listen to this clip from today of Republican Senator from the state of Kansas, Roger Marshall, as he absolutely spreads misinformation about the pandemic till this day.
Certainly intuitively from the very beginning, I thought that natural immunity would be better than the mRNA vaccination. The mRNA vaccination basically your body produces an antibody to just the spike protein. But if you've had the virus, you have immunity, you develop antibodies to the entire virus. And as this virus changes the look of that spike, the mRNA vaccination just doesn't work. We knew that.
I'm sorry? This is misinformation being spread on national television from Fox News. I shouldn't be surprised, but I just want us to realize that a country that is this a party, a movement that is this committed to death from the pandemic is literally not going to do anything to stop this death and mayhem that comes as a result of guns, especially when they're paid good money by the NRA to do nothing about it. In other news, Republicans are now all of a sudden concerned about the debt ceiling. We understand that every time the conversation comes around about the debt ceiling, there is a bit of kabuki theater. It happened. I mean, the debt ceiling argument comes around like clockwork every year, every 2 years. Every time we look up, there's a fight over whether or not America is going to pay its debts. We're also familiar with the phenomenon of Republicans not actually caring about the deficits when they're in power. Never thinking about defaulting on the debt ceiling when they're in power. They only care about it when Democrats are in power. Take a listen to Representative Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Pennsylvania, Brendan Boyle, Democrat, as he makes this point very clearly.
You know, you can always tell when there's a Democrat in the White House because their Republican colleagues suddenly become concerned again about deficit and debt. When there's a Republican in the White House, they conveniently forget that topic. But every time they take over and there's a Democrat in the White House, suddenly there's this focus on deficit and debt. Well, here's the hypocrisy in what they're saying. As part of Cutco that they reinstated last night, any tax cuts that they propose do not have to be offset. So all of those critical investments that Chair DeLauro spoke about, critical investments in the American people, education, jobs creation, helping veterans, all of those have to be offset according to their rules. But another big round of tax cuts, like what they did the last time they were in the majority, $2 trillion tax cut, 83% of which went to the wealthiest 1%, not one dime of that would have to be offset. So keep that in mind when they're crying crocodile tears about our national debt.
That's right. Crocodile tears. I mean, that's perfect. That's exactly what it is. But again, we live in such a ridiculous society that while we know that this is a matter of fact, that Republicans play this game every so many years, we don't have a discourse in this country that exposes that. Instead, we have media who are complicit with it because, of course, the media, they're all millionaires. They all appreciate the tax breaks that they're given, the tax cuts that they're given by the Republican Party. And so every so many years, we play this game of deficits, the game of debt, and try to pretend as though, or we allow the media forwards the idea that Republicans actually mean what they say when they pretend to care about the debt. Also, keep in mind the Republican Party is actively trying to defund the 87,000 new IRS agents. Now, that's easily attacked, right? When you hear the government is hiring 87,000 IRS agents, you want to know why. Well, many of these people are retiring over the next 10 years, and these are the replacements. But also, a part of the package is to absolutely go after the billionaires and the millionaires who cheat the system. Listen, I'm not rooting for the IRS because I have to write them a check every single month. Listen, let's be honest about it. Let's be honest about the fact that defunding the IRS being the number one priority of Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, and the Republican Party should let you know that this is not going to do anything for people who make an average income, an average living. This is going to protect their billionaires at the expense of the federal government. Some estimates suggest that the defunding of these 87,000 new IRS agents is going to cost the Pentagon $75 billion. That's fine. I'm not worried about that so much. But it's going to cost the American people, taxpayers. It's going to cost us money as a nation. And here they are complaining about the debt ceiling. They're worried about the deficit when they literally only ever pass bills that will increase the deficit. And now we're going back to the talking points of taxation is theft. Listen to this clip of Anna Paulina Luna, who is the representative from Florida, the 13th congressional district. She's only been there for a couple of days, but she's gotten her libertarian talking points down.
I'm not going to say that I want to cut defense spending, but I will say that I think it's important that we are looking to make sure that we are getting the best deal, especially on some of the stuff that we're spending money on. So I think that we need to have those discussions. But more or less what I've heard in some of these negotiations is we're talking about programs that aren't going to the necessities that we, the American people, need, i.e. protections. I'm talking about some of these woke ideology, these funded programs, and for example, these salaries for these additional weaponized 87,000 IRS agents, which you saw we tried to pass, yet the Senate and even the Biden White House is pushing back on. Sir, I say taxation is theft, and I don't want any more IRS agents than you probably do.
She had to throw in woke ideology for good measure, even though she realized as she said it that it really didn't fit there, that the talking point called for her to talk about the weaponized IRS agent. She mixed up the W's. She said woke ideology instead of the weaponized IRS agents. I know that could get a bit confusing for fledgling propagandists like herself. And for a moment there, she sounded like who was that? The Miss Universe? What was it, Miss America? Like when she was asked about Iran and such and what and whatnot and such. But I digress. Enough mocking her. The point is this, folks. This is this is standard operating procedures for Republicans every so many years. What the media does is pretend like this is the first time they've heard these talking points because it's a new person, because it's a new congressperson repeating it. Oh, wow, this new talking point from Marjorie Taylor Greene, from Lauren Boebert, we've never heard. Yes, we have. We've heard these same tired talking points for the last 50 years. 40 years of trickle-down economics, and we understand 100% that this has always been a ploy to give this entire country to the richest people. We're not just talking about give them an advantage. I have a clip later on, someone mentioned meritocracy. This is not about giving them a slight advantage in a meritocracy. These are policies that completely neutralize any meritocratic nature in this country. Anything that's remotely meritocratic, anything that would create a level playing field, the rich are not interested in. And so they make sure they buy enough politicians to ensure that they have the lowest tax burden possible. While if you're working Joe, take a look at your check. Take a look at what you owe the IRS. Listen, I've got a lot more to cover. Many more stories. I'm going down to Florida to cover Ron DeSantis as he continues his assault on democracy there in the state of Florida and his aspirations to do so across his country. I'm also going to be covering Marjorie Taylor Greene getting suspended on Twitter or being locked out of her account because she decided to use Dr. Dre in one of her videos. And Dr. Dre's attorneys responded, and Dr. Dre himself responded with some pretty strong language about his music being used by someone as hateful as Marjorie Taylor Greene. Patreon.com/the BPD show to get access to that. Twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions. Everyone else, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.